Hello and welcome to episode number 618 of Smart Podcast Trashy Books. I'm Sarah Wendell. My guest today is Steve Ammidown. In June 1989, Kathryn Falk published The Romance Reader's Handbook, which is a 354-page spiral-bound collection of everything a romance reader would need to know. Steve is going to take us on a brief tour through this really neat artifact of romance history. There's over 2,000 pseudonyms in this book, plus a directory of where to contact authors, lists of bookstores that love romance, and recommended reads, plus advertisements, lots of advertisements. Basically, this is early social media for authors and readers, and it's a really interesting time capsule. And because, as always, podcast is the most visual of mediums, I will have a PDF download of the pages that we're talking about at smartbitchestrashybooks.com/podcast under episode 618. It's a big PDF, but like I said, this is a really interesting time capsule. And if you'd like to see what it looks like inside, well, I've got scans. My flatbed scanner and I, we're really good friends. And speaking of scans, hello, podcast Patreon community. You remain fabulous. Thank you. And I have a compliment this week for Allons-y. There might be an abundance of pollen near you, but this is partly because the flowers and the trees in your area are trying their hardest to show off in order to brighten your day because you are among their favorite people. If you would like a compliment of your very own, have a look at patreon.com/smartbitches. Monthly pledges start at $1. And if you are a Patreon member, you get full PDF scans of Romantic Times magazine each month. And those are, several hundred pages. And you get bonus episodes. We have a lovely Discord where people tell bad jokes and share links to new video games. And it's a really lovely community. Plus, you're supporting the show and making sure that every episode has a transcript like this one. Hello, Garlic Knitter. Thank you, Alonzi, and thank you for being part of the Patreon. If you're not a member and you'd like to join, patreon.com/smartbitches. Support for this episode comes from Caraway. We love our Caraway cookware. We decided after 20 plus years it was time to replace our pots and pans, and we got the entire cookware set. It's navy, it's gorgeous, we love it. But our older child is moving into his first apartment this fall, and we got a set for him as well. And he's excited about the storage and organization as he is about the cookware. The cookware set is extremely useful, and it comes with a lot of pieces. There's a fry pan, a saute pan, a saucepan, and a Dutch oven with lids and storage. All sets come equipped with an easy access storage solution. No stacking is required. There's little magnetic slots and each pan fits in its little house. Our other task this summer is teaching our older child how to cook some of his favorite meals. And it's really fun walking him through the recipes and showing him which pan works for which step. The Caraway pans just work. We saute vegetables, we make pasta, we simmer sauces, and the pans can go from the stove to the oven and back again with no trouble. Over 25,000 people have raved about their Caraway kitchen, and you can try it for yourself. And as a reminder, their iconic cookware set comes with a saute pan, fry pan, Dutch oven, and saucepan, plus lids for all of them, a canvas lid holder, and a magnetic pan rack for storage. It's the ultimate kitchen setup, and it will save you $150 versus buying each item individually. Plus, if you visit carawayhome.com/Sarah, you can take an additional 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusively for you, our listeners, so visit carawayhome.com/Sarah or use code Sarah at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. All right. Are you ready to go back in time in a different direction? We're going to journey into the Romance Reader's Handbook. Let's do this podcast. This thing is so wild. I love this. It's like I just opened up to a random page and I'm like, what the hell is this?
It's a beautiful little time capsule.
It really is. One of the things I've noticed about the Romantic Times magazines, we just did, I have it right here because I'm still working with it. We just did this glorious thing.
Oh, it's a beauty.
Not only did Amanda friggin' love this issue from May 1994, but she bought Heaven. She wants to read it. She's like, I have to read this. But like the number of author glamour shots, look at these headshots. That is 1,000% a glamour shot. I mean, I didn't even know what colors that was because I was around in the glamour shots time. Now in this one, the headshots are like Laura Kinsale's headshot is very dramatic. It's very dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be so great. I'm so excited to do this. Thank you for doing this. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Tell the people who will be listening who you are and what you do.
So my name is Steve Ammidown.
Hello, Steve.
Hello.
Long time no talk.
Yeah, it's been a few years. I am an archivist and librarian by training. Right now, I am sort of an independent researcher, I like to call myself. And I focus on romance novels in general, with sort of sideways into like unique collecting items, and then also Black romance and some of the history of the genre as well. So
it has quite a history.
Yeah, and I operate a website called romancehistory.com, and also sometimes update my Instagram page, Romance Historian. Sometimes. It's been a while.
Well, the social media is a pain in the ass. It's
exhausting.
It really is. And now there's like, 5 you need to kind of keep track of. And I'm like, this is preposterous and I hate it. But, that's how we do business on the internet, which sucks.
Exactly.
So today we are talking about the Romance Reader's Handbook. What is the Romance Reader's Handbook? You and I each have one. I will be putting lots of visual aids in the show notes for this. And also, just listeners, when you listen to this sound is the fact that this is an old spiral bound book and I cannot hide that noise. So if you hear that and you're like, what the hell? Why is the cat in the litter box? No, that is the spiral bound book that you hear. So what is the Romance Reader book?
I will be
You're making that same noise?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what is the Romance Reader's Handbook? Tell me about this wonderful trove of weird history.
So the Romance Reader's Handbook was published by Romantic Times in 1989. Their plan, according to everything they wrote in sort of the front of the book, was to update it every few years. They did not. This is a one and done project. It is a beautiful little time capsule at the moment. It is in equal parts bibliography, bookstore guide, resource for readers, resource for authors. It's got a little bit of everything. It's based on and built off something called the Romantic Spirit, which was a bibliography published a few times starting in 1983 by 3 women who lived in San Antonio, Mary Hotchkiss, June Manning, and Kay Gartizer. They worked at a bookstore called the Second Edition in San Antonio that was romance focused. It wasn't exclusively romance, but it was a used bookstore. So clearly it had a lot of like category and all of these other romances in it. And there was no bibliography for all these books. So if you wanted to sort of follow an author across pseudonyms, across publishers, you had no chance. Unless you found an article somewhere, whether it was in Romantic Times or elsewhere, you just had no chance to like understand where Jane Ann Krentz went after she left Candlelight or what have you.
So to be real clear, because I have a feeling that there are some people who might be listening who've never heard of such a thing, a bibliography is a list of books. It is a book that is a list of other books.
Yes.
And this is a research tool that is very useful.
Yeah, and it's we usually think of them as research tools for academics.
Right.
But when it comes to genre fiction, whether it was science fiction or mysteries or romance, like people have built bibliographies both themselves and then published them just to keep track of things, whether it was magazines or books or whatever, because this is all ephemeral stuff, right? Like it's stuff that was meant to be thrown away and the records were not good.
No.
So we relied on readers to put all this together.
I know that's true for the Romantic Times magazine because I actually reached out to the Bowling Green Library and said, which ones do you not have? Because whichever ones you don't have, I will send them to you because they're like, I put out a notice on Facebook and somebody sent me like a box this big full of Romantic Times. Some of them are from the 80s. They're like very delicate. They're crispy, very crispy. Yeah. These are not meant, I mean, these are printed on newsprint. They are not meant to be like just sort of hanging out. They're not on a glossy paper. They're very delicate. That's why I had to buy like special boxes for my Romantic Times magazines.
Well, and the original ones were like tabloid sized. They were these sort of fantastic newspapers, which somebody would have picked up at like Walden Books or something.
Oh, Walden Books. That's the other thing. I read these old issues of RT and I'm like, B. Dalton, Walden Books, Borders. But the thing that's kind of amazing is that these are very well-funded professional fan products.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love that because what Kathryn Falk was doing, it was creating an archive and a printed record of the genre, which was itself extremely ephemeral. So I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take a look at what this is doing. Like what are some of the things that are happening inside this book that you want to talk about? And also, why do you love this book so much? Like you get so delighted when you talk about this.
I get giddy. I'm like giddy with love for this book because the internet does not hold all things.
What?
I know. It's amazing, but it's true. And so these books, both this one and The Romantic Spirit are these kind of essential little moments where you will find pen names and things in those books that don't exist elsewhere. Like you'll be able to track somebody down and go, oh, that's that person. Someone like Jane Haddam, who wrote all of these great mystery books, but also, kind of cut her teeth as a writer writing category romance, but disavowed it completely. So like, these books provide you a way to sort of track those down. So that makes me so happy. And these books are kind of this bridge, I think, between the reader and the author. And, like you said, they're very well financed and marketable fan products. You'll find copies of these books that have like coffee stains on the cover and like clearly, and smell like smoke. And,
thank God this one does not, but I do have stains.
Yeah, some of my other reference books definitely do smell like smoke.
Can I recommend if it doesn't hurt your archivist heart's feelings, dryer sheets are great for taking that out.
Oh, that's a great idea, actually. I've let them air out. I also keep them in the same room as the cat litter. So it all
cancels out then, right?
Yep.
The other thing that's interesting is that I think these lists of synonyms really sort of form a bridge between two time periods where romance was published under the auspices of the publisher. You were a Harlequin Presents reader. You were a Candlelight reader. You were an Avon Historical reader. The sort of top line goal for the publisher was to continue the line, and the author identity and the author voice was often kind of secondary. Like they wanted a good voice, but they weren't necessarily investing in you. They were investing in your place in this line. So for readers to be able to trace, so-and-so who I liked in historical wrote Harlequin Presents and also wrote like Love Inspired or whatever else, you can find them under different names when the publisher might not be really super into telling you where this person has gone.
Right. And Harlequin at this point in sort of the mid to late 80s, still in a lot of cases owned people's pen names.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that they owned the pen names.
So this was a whole thing, and RWA actually fought them and sued them on this and won.
Now the penny has dropped. I remember people talking about the lawsuit. Oh, wow. So, yeah.
So you will actually find, as you go through less this book and more The Romantic Spirit, that you'll find sort of authors linked under multiple pen names, sharing pen names. And it's not that they were co-writing, it's that in some cases they just came after each other.
Yeah.
Under the same pen name.
Francine Pascal did that with Kate Williams. Kate Williams, who wrote the Francine Pascal books, was like 5-6 different writers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a tour of this amazing book. You have pulled out some pages that we're going to take a look at, and I am ready. Let's go.
So I think we start at the beginning. There's on page 3 here.
Yeah.
There's a photograph of what are identified as the compilers. And I think we know that Kathryn Falk was really the guiding light more than the compiler. But you also had Melinda Helfer, who was a longtime reviewer for RT.
Oh, yeah.
And Kathy Robin, who was also had been around forever at that point. RT was like 7 or 8 years old at this point in 1989.
Wow.
And Melinda had reviewed like 10,000 books already. Like it was the two of them. They did not, I don't think they had bylines on their reviews at that early date.
Not consistently that I've seen, no.
Yeah. And so Melinda Helfer also ran the pseudonym sleuth column in the early RTs,
Very
where
smart.
she wrote about sort of tracking down, and had people like writing in like the the letters in the front of Parade magazine, like, how do I track down this author?
Yeah.
And she would sort of be that connecting tissue. And she sort of is this incredible presence, and we'll get to one of the reasons why I think she's so important later. But also, like, you have their addresses, you can send them mail, and this is part of the whole communicative nature of this project, I think.
Yeah, a lot of this was about connecting with authors and writing to
Mhm.
authors. Or I noticed this in later issues of RT. RT would be like, oh, we reached out to them on your behalf and found out the answer to your question. Here you go. So they were both the
Yeah.
connection and also the conduit for people.
Yeah, and I think that was the real gift that
Mhm.
Kathryn Falk had with this project, was understanding the fan culture around romance and sort of boosting it and kind of like being like the fertile soil for it to grow in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I think that was really just so important in that establishment of like not quite a parasocial relationship, but kind of a parasocial relationship between the two.
Yeah.
To kind of get all that going.
I used to have breakfast with Kathy Robin when I lived in New Jersey, and I have
Oh,
lost
yeah.
touch with her. I don't even know if she's still on the earth. I have to find out.
Yeah. It's, there's a lot of, as I think you guys have found in your RT series, there's a lot there that like deserves like a documentary or something about like how that magazine existed for so long, and like
You could do
some of the
such
decisions.
a documentary series on this.
Oh my
magazine.
God, it would be great.
And one of the things that Amanda pointed out that stuck with me that I think is so smart is she pointed out she had never read the magazine before we started like looking at issues, but she'd been to RT and she's like, wow, the conference really was the magazine come to life.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's astonishing that you start a
Mhm.
print magazine and then turn it into a conference and the vibes match. Like that's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead to page 13. The story behind pseudonyms by Kathryn Falk.
So this kind of kicks off a whole section of articles.
I'm just looking at this through a 2024 lens. Why do so many authors use pseudonyms? I'm a dumbass that uses my real name on the internet. Let me tell you why I wish I had. Come on now. Looking at this through 2024 is wild.
Yeah. and I think that's, sort of what this sort of section gets to is Kathryn's kind of spilling some tea on some of the names, like Dean Koontz comes up.
Yes.
He wrote like romantic horror, romantic suspense, like something in there. He wrote a few titles under a pen name. And then there's a bunch of other men like Tom Wilde, or Tom Huff, who was Jennifer Wilde,
Mm-hmm.
Who was kind of Kathryn's darling through a lot of the early days of RT, wrote the Man's Perspective article or column for a number of years that I thought was always fascinating. But so this whole section there's an article by Tom Huff, Jennifer Wilde. There's an article by Melinda Helfer explaining the pseudonym Sooth, which is hard to say. Like, I would not want to say that 10 times fast.
There's a lot of things in RT that I'm like, no one was meant to say this out loud, huh?
No, it was all meant to be read.
Yeah.
So, and then you have Heather Graham, who wrote as Shannon Drake, and of course, Heather Graham Posacer.
She was also a major figure at RT. Like she would sponsor a whole, I used to think of her family as like the Von Trapps if they were from Vegas. Like the whole family is theatrical. I think they used to own or still own a prop business. At my first RT, they hung somebody on stage. There was a hanging. After dinner, thankfully, it was after dinner, but there was a hanging.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
And then there's also a Jane Ann Krentz article where she sort of reveals, I think at this point she had 6 pseudonyms.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane Castle, Stephanie James, Amanda Glass, Jane Bentley, and Jane Taylor, in addition to Jane Ann Krentz. And then
Amanda Quick.
Amanda Quick came after this. I think.
Yes. And Jane Castle with a futuristic. So that's 7
Yes.
names.
Yep. And I know she's talked about this on other podcasts, that she originally did it to both appease publishers and like make sure she wasn't confusing readers, but kind of wishes she didn't. For the, kind of the opposite reason about using a real name on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like then it gets too confusing.
I've also heard authors talk about how adopting a pseudonym means that they can sort of separate their work life from their personal life.
Sure.
And that they can put themselves in a slightly different headspace for writing. And what is what is this pseudonym becomes like a character.
Right.
Makes sense.
Except when you get to 7.
Yeah, and you get to 7 and like, who the hell am
like,
I? That's just a real fractured. That's just a real fractured identity there.
Yeah. So I think this is a really fascinating section that kind of leads into the pseudonyms themselves,
which is a big chunk of this book.
It's a huge chunk, and I think really interesting in the way that you kind of get to see all these names together, and they do not discriminate. There are men listed here who were kind of mercenary romance authors, I call them, where like they were doing it for the paycheck, right? Like it wasn't they wanted to be a romance author. It was like, I just finished my World War II book. Now I need to write a romance.
Yep.
To keep the paychecks coming in.
And one thing about RT is that, and RWA to a lesser extent, but definitely RT, the minute a man showed up as a writer, the vibe would change. Like there were mercenary romance writers who were men when I was attending RT. This book is before my time. What did you say this was? 1983?
1989.
1989.
So
I was 14. Like I was not here yet.
Same. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mercenary romance writers.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And at this phase of RT, they would sort of kind of lavish the men who appeared on their pages in like sort of faint praise and like, oh, look at this brave man writing a romance novel.
Was very weird. There's a lot of, here's the men's perspective. And I'm like, but why do we need that?
Yeah.
Does that make us legitimate? I don't think so.
At the first RT conference, which was, I forget what year it was, but there was a separate men's track for the husbands of the authors.
Yep. That was continued.
And it pretty much involved them going to the bar. They like went and hung out at the bar and talked about finances.
I went to the Romantic Novelists Association conference a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and that's the UK writers. But for the most part, the people who attended that conference were mostly people who had retired, and this was their retirement like passion was writing. And all their husbands came to the conference. And I was like, what are we doing all these men? They all as a group got up, left and went birding all day, just wandering around looking at birds. And I was like, see, this is what
totally
RT needed. Because in 93, there was a whole article about the men's group and what are we doing to support our fabulous wives and what can we do to be, I'm like, first of all, yes, support your fabulous wives, but like, you don't need your own track.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just go watch birds. It's fine.
Right. Go watch basketball or something.
Yeah.
Or like go do something else. So we get into the pseudonym section, and I sent you a picture of page 43 from my book.
Yes.
That I think is really interesting. So my book in the front says it was owned by Cassie Ellis.
Hi, Cassie.
I don't know where she is now, but hopefully she's still with us. And she annotated the heck out of this book, and I love it so much.
Oh, that's adorable. Poor characters.
There is nothing that
girl.
Yeah, there's nothing that an archivist loves more than an annotated book.
And I just want to point out for those listening that the pseudonym section that we're talking about is page 27 through 156. This is a lot of pages of people's names is what we're talking about here. Like if you remember the begats section of the Bible, it's like that on steroids.
And this is just names.
It's just
it doesn't even list their book.
So what kind of annotations do you have? So
one of the things I love about this is that Cassie really only annotated the authors she didn't like for the most part. She would say poor writing, or next to Elaine Camp's name, it says poor characters.
Which is wild because Elaine Camp has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pseudonyms.
Exactly. And then she has another annotation for Linda Cahillo, says good on fairy tale rewrites. And she crossed out rewrites several times. And like notes that she was a love swept author. So that's the thing is like, I feel like readers kind of use this book to kind of keep track of what they were reading, who they had read, because damn, it's confusing, especially at this age, in this sort of day and age that we're talking about. This is post kind of the romance explosion of the early 80s.
Yeah.
But you had now thousands of books out in the marketplace instead of hundreds. So it was a lot harder to keep track.
I like her notation. I read most of her series with grandmothers / matchmakers and wealthy Philadelphia family.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which now I'm like, I kind of want to find that series. That sounds interesting, especially as a love swept. That could
right?
Be really
Heck yeah. I also have to point out that at the top of the section, at the top of each alphabetical letter, names in italics indicate an author's legal name, which does not appear on books. She or he uses pseudonyms only. So basically we're just doxing people here. We're just doxing them all the way down. Yeah. Okay.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Which it's a different time, but I look at that now and I go, ooh.
Well, and those names probably would have mostly come from the copyright page.
Yes. Yes.
So the name was in the book. It just wasn't like a thing you spoke aloud.
And this was still meant for a smaller audience. It's not like this was published.
Absolutely.
This wasn't a massive circulation. This was a very niche publication.
The thing about the pseudonym section is you can literally just pick a page.
Yep.
And it's this fascinating document.
You singled out page 91 for Jane Ann Krentz's list of names, which is fascinating.
Jane Ann Krentz, like we said, at this point had 6 pen names, and would eventually add Amanda Quick.
Yeah. All right. I'm in a great game of tag yourself. I just want to claim J.S. Thimblethorpe as my new pen name. I am now J.S. Thimblethorpe. It's been nice knowing you as Sarah. I am now J.S.
I mean, you can't copyright a name, right? So that's all yours.
That's mine. I've claimed it. Yeah, this is a really weird treasure trove of identity and branding.
It is.
Here's a whole collection of names, and it is a really okay. So this person picked all their pen names with an atlas. So we have Heather Wayne, and then we have Nora Gibbs, Sarah Whittingham, Prudence Boyd, Noelle Ireland, Lizette Garland, Claire Ritchie, Lynn Merrill, Nina Shane, and Dallas Romaine. So it's vegetables and country names and location names.
City you live in plus the last thing you ate. I think that was
very much that. It's very much
the approach. Yeah.
Wow. Here's Margaret Sebastian, capital S-E, capital B-A-S-T-I-O. Wow. What's fascinating to me also is the number of St. Clair.
That was a real thing.
St. David, St. John, St. Pierre. Yeah, whole bunch of that. Yeah. And now
Sandra
people
Brown had a saint name at one point.
And I think that's really a struggle right now for the digital algorithm, because it's very hard to make sure your book comes up if somebody's going to put ST period or SAINT. Do you spell it out? How do you do that? What do you do with the initials? If you have initials, are there periods or is it just 2 letters? Like, it makes it hard for the digital SEO purposes.
Or if you have God forbid you have an apostrophe.
Oh, you're screwed. Name. Forget it.
Yeah. Then
just go with Smith, or, I could loan you Thimblethorpe if you wanted. I can loan you
for a fee, for a small fee.
I'm licensing the Thimblethorpe now.
Yes.
See how my nefarious plans just grow.
It makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. Now, let's jump to page 156, because this is wild to me as a person who does the reviewing. This is wild.
I love it. So this is, it's titled To Be the Best by Melinda Helfer, and it has a picture of her holding a trophy, which I'm guessing is an RT award that she got at some point. And she says, when I encounter such a special book, one that makes me oblivious to everything except the author's reality, I rate it as a 4+. And for those rare books transcending even that high plateau, I have marked them with a rating of 5 to signify a totally unique reading experience, a true classic of the genre.
Okay. I have so many thoughts on the RT grading rubric. I rant about it every issue, no matter where we are. 4.5 stars, 4.5 stars, top pick, 4.5 stars, top pick gold. What does that mean? I actually made an icon for our podcast Discord that is a roll of toilet paper with gold stars on it. So you can emoji some gold star TP. Like the consistent lack of a consistent rubric makes me bonkers.
Yeah, and this was at a point when they only had 2 reviewers. Really.
This is all Melinda's fault. I am just going to blame her.
Yeah. And I think you pointed out at some point that they retired 5 stars even. At one point, I think it was Melinda Helfer passed away in 2000.
That would probably be
and it was probably about then.
Yeah.
But then, like, we get all of Melinda Helfer's 5-star picks.
So basically, this is Melinda Helfer's Desert Island Keepers, and it has so much weight. It's in this book. Like I'm like in awe of how much weight is now invested in this list of books, and it's not that many books.
Yeah, and she says, like, out of the 10,000 plus books I reviewed for Romantic Times, only these have gotten 5 stars. There are 16 books on this list.
Out of 10,000.
Out of 10,000. So, like, this is the page I think of every time the you should only give books 5 stars discourse pops up. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, A, taste is subjective. And B, like, authors got along perfectly fine through the 80s and 90s with Melinda Helfer out there, you know, reading their books.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, 1 star was acceptable.
Right.
Fabio's book got 2 stars.
Yeah.
Fabio got 2 stars as it was good.
You know, this is a real list.
This is a wild list. Okay.
This is like, you know, and it ranges. There's like Sharon and Tom Curtis. There's Linda Howard, Iris Johansson, Jane Ann Krentz's Sweet Starfire, which was like the beginning of romantic science fiction. Laura London, Elizabeth Lowell, like
the Windflower is on here. That makes sense. So the books are Lightning That Lingers. Is that the one with the guy who's a stripper?
I don't know.
I think it's
a love swept, so it's entirely possible.
He's the hottest. Okay, you're sitting down, right, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, he moonlights at the Cougar Club as their hottest dancer, but his passion is biology, wildlife, and restoring his home. So he flips houses and he strips. Like, more power to this guy. And then the heroine is a sweet, innocent Jennifer, because you have to be a sweet, innocent Jennifer in a love swept. That's like the law. We have A Special Man by Billy Green.
Yeah. If you don't love early love sweps, I can't help you.
Yeah.
They're just the wildest books, and they're so great.
The Trustworthy Redhead by Iris Johansson. Okay. Danger
As opposed
Zone.
to all those other redheads.
Yeah. Those other redheads are not to be born. Doreen Owens Malick, who I have a very soft spot for, because I don't know if the glare will allow you to see this, but I have an original Doreen Owens Malick oil painting in my office.
I love it.
Yeah. I think that's
so cool.
The Lark and the Somebody. Sunshine and Shadow. So Sharon and Tom Curtis got 2 books. Oh, Elizabeth Lowell. I have not thought about Elizabeth Lowell in a long time, and I loved Elizabeth Lowell's books.
Yeah.
I don't even know if some of these are still in print even.
Probably not.
Because
so a lot of them, especially the first half of the list, are categories that would have had 1 printing unless the author got the rights back.
Yeah.
You know, they're good, but they wouldn't have, you know, with the exception of One Summer by Nora Roberts, probably wouldn't have gotten repackaged more than once.
Wow. Now I want to read Elizabeth Lowell. So thank you, book. Appreciate that. That's great. So let's talk about the ads. There's also, you will be shocked to notice, no, everyone, there are ads. There are ads out the wazoo in this thing.
So many ads.
So many ads.
And they're mostly individual author ads, which I think is really interesting. There are a few publisher ads, but not as many as you would have found in a normal Romantic Times.
Yeah.
It's mostly authors, you know, and page 220 is a really good example for Dorothy Garlock.
Oh, Dorothy Garlock.
And it lists all of her books
Mm-hmm.
and all of her pen names
Mm-hmm.
and all of the publishers that she worked with.
Yep.
So like Dorothy Garlock, she wrote for Warner and Popular, as well as Love Swept.
Mm-hmm.
She would have used her real name for Love Swept because they did not allow pseudonyms, which is a really fascinating thing. Yeah. So that was...
And that had to influence their signing decisions, right?
Absolutely. That was their whole like starting lineup was Sharon and Tom Curtis and Sandra Brown and like names that people would go, oh, I want to read that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Carolyn Nichols' whole thing with starting Love Swept was no more pseudonyms. And it was kind of this acknowledgement, again, of the fan culture.
Yeah.
Like, people wanted to know the authors. So she said, no pseudonyms. And for every book, you have to, like, write a little, like, thing about it, like an author's note that when it inside the front and back covers. So mostly when those were digitized, that bit was lost because they would only digitize the pages. But they're really fascinating. And Sandra Brown's early ones are really good in Love Swept.
If you look at page 196, there is an ad for Eileen Nauman, also known as Lindsay McKenna, and Beth Brooks, with her newest book. She's got little stars down the side. She's wearing an aviator jacket and a white silk scarf, and the scarf appears to be glowing. It's pretty amazing.
It's so glamour shots.
It's extremely glamour shots. That hair is high. That hair is close to God. And there's a letter, dear readers, and here is my address. Please send a self-addressed stamped envelope for handsome 4-color bookmarks. As my favorite part of this, in a way of saying thanks to those who have taken the time to write, I very often use your names as secondary characters in the book. I'd be so freaked out. And then this horrible person named Sarah showed up. And she's offering to sell you previous titles. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope for a list and prices of previous titles. Like, here's a letter. Here's where to write me. Please contact me directly. And this is like, that's a house.
Yep.
Hartville Road in Town. That's a house. Like, you're just giving out your address.
You have to admire the hustle in that. Like, there's like, she is just no bones. Like, I'm going to connect with you, and I'm going to like establish this allegiance that you're going to read all my books.
Yeah. And you're going to read all my books, and you're going to write to me, and we're going to be pen pals. And I definitely grew up at the tail end, and I'm sure you experienced this too, of writing to authors.
Yeah.
Writing fan. Like, I wrote a lot of letters to authors, care of Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, because that's where Dell was. I'm really curious how much these ads were.
There must be something in like some of the 1987, 88 romantic times, because Kathryn never like dropped something by surprise. It was always, here's what is coming. And sometimes it never came, but you always knew it was coming.
Oh yeah.
One way or the other.
She is good at marketing.
Yeah.
The ads are such an interesting time capsule because to put it in marketing terms, the call to action is contact me directly. Let's be pen pals.
Yeah, and ask me for bookmarks.
Yeah.
Bookmarks were like the thing at this point.
If you look at page 246, I have a very important question about page 246.
246. Oh my.
She does not tell us the name of her bird in this ad. How dare you put a picture of yourself with your bird on your shoulder and not tell us the name of this bird? What are you thinking?
I am shocked and appalled.
I am taking this very personally, Steve. I'm very upset.
I think we should write her a letter.
Yes.
To Bellyache Ridge Road in Walcott, Colorado.
Okay.
So on page 270, we have something they call the Directory for Traveling Book Lovers.
Oh my gosh.
And what this is an index by state in some sort of order. They're not in alphabetical order. I'm not sure how looks like they're ordered by zip code, perhaps. It's hard to tell. But it's ordered by state, and they're bookstores that Kathryn has some sort of relationship with as the publisher of RT, but also are romance focused or romance specific.
Mm-hmm.
And this was both for readers who were traveling, but also for authors.
I was just going to say the audience for this, this is what's so fascinating about Kathryn Falk. The audience for the magazine and the audience for this book are multiple groups at the same time. Some of whom have competing interests.
Right.
It's wow.
It's always for the reader, the bookseller, the publisher, the author, and the aspiring author.
Did you see the motto on page 259? Book lovers are equal. No author is better than her readers or booksellers. No reader is better than her author or bookseller. No bookseller is better than her readers or authors. We fight for what's right, WRITE. Now, I understand the egalitarian nature of this message and the attempting to eradicate a power structure, but I would also like to point out that Kathryn Falk is none of those three.
No.
Yes. And she published this book.
Yeah, the gatekeeper's gatekeeper.
Oh, yes, she was.
Yeah. And so this is, as you look at these entries, so for at the very beginning, Alabama, paperbacks trade and save.
Yep.
You have the address, the hours, says it takes MasterCard and Visa.
Mm-hmm.
25% off romance new and used.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says at the bottom, loves photos, newsletters, bookmarks, 25 to 50, and posters. So it's begging authors. All of these entries have something similar where they're begging authors to send them stuff to give away.
Stuff.
Some sort of, giveaway or newsletter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so much good stuff here. A lot of these are gone. I've done a little bit of poking, and most of them are gone. I know that one of them, I think, no, it's not even listed here. There was one I used to frequent in Pennsylvania called the Paperback Exchange in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, but it is not on the list here. But that was, again, like most of these stores, they stocked everything, but their primary sort of trade was in romance novels.
Yep.
And it would literally be trading romance novels. People would build up credit and swap a Nora Roberts for a Nora Roberts and, just move through the whole store in some cases.
You also pointed out 292. And when I saw that, I guffawed.
Yes, the section for chain store managers who care, which they care, gosh darn it.
There are many managers who care, and as they contact us, we will include them in the next handbook. The story continues.
Which never came. The story did not continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are all mostly B. Dalton and Walden books.
Yep.
There's a few regional chains represented, Brentano's. But the rest are mostly B. Dalton and Walden books. And we know, there were, gatekeepers in these stores, right? These were, people who kind of, made decisions about what romances got stocked.
Yes.
And I will point out, their names are there, but there's no, contact information.
No. How freaky would that be? You don't know you're in this guide, and then some rando comes in your store and it's like, hi, I'm looking for Judy. I want to talk to her about romance. How do you know Judy? She's my boss. What are you talking about? And it's interesting because the whole bookstores that care, chain managers that care, it implies that the default is, but nobody cares about us except us. It's very much enforcing that sort of underdog, tinge of victimhood. Nobody cares about us. That romance still, grapples with.
Us against the world.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So jumping ahead, getting in touch with more of your favorite authors.
Yeah. It's fun to network with authors, we're told.
Is it now?
And so this is actually advice for authors primarily about doing bookmarks, forming, romance reader clubs, all of these things. And it's really interesting. And then on 300, there's lovely convention memories from Phoenix 1989.
Oh, goodness.
These are sort of scattered throughout the book, and they're fun weird little time capsules of a very specific moment.
And that was one of the other elements of Kathryn Falk's work, was making authors into celebrities.
Yes, absolutely.
Very invested in that.
Yeah, she helped make Janet Daly an even bigger name.
Yep.
Jennifer Wilde, Tom Huff had sort of passed his prime in a lot of ways when RT started, but she helped sort of get his books back in the mainstream. She played a big role in all of that, especially with like Kathleen Woodiwiss again, sort of rejuvenating her career in the 80s.
Yeah.
As she sort of came back to the Bodice Ripper. And then, in the midst of all these ads, so like I said, there's not a lot of publisher ads except on 338.
Yeah.
There is an ad for Love Swept.
This is amazing.
Where you can get a makeup case with a mirror that lights up.
What could be more useful than a makeup case with a mirror that lights up?
Exactly. Why not? Just for trying Love Swept.
Wow.
And, there's a whole history of these. Like Harlequin kind of kicked it off in the 70s. So, like, there's bookmarks and ceramic figurines and the paperback book covers. Do you remember those? So you didn't have to show people you were reading a Bodice Ripper? This
Love Swept ad is kind of amazing just for the pricing. Send me my free exclusive title, Larger Than Life, and my first 6 books to preview free for 15 days. If I decide to keep them, I'll pay just $2.09 per book, plus shipping and handling, and sales tax in Illinois and New York. And please get me my free makeup case upon receipt of payment. 6 titles at $2.09 a book, plus shipping and handling. You're still probably under $20.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh. What a bygone time. And then, of course, there's page 341, which is one of my favorite things about romance as a fandom. There is always this low-key messaging and you're going to write one someday, right?
Yeah.
That you're going to join this club of writers.
There has always been a multi-level marketing aspect of romance.
Yep.
Where, like, I could do it, so can you.
It really is an MLM.
Book.
Yep.
Yeah, you'll buy my book about writing a romance, which Kathryn wrote several times over.
Did she ever actually write a romance? Like, did she know what she was talking about? I don't know if she knew what she was talking about there, but okay.
I don't think she ever published one, to be honest. She wrote books about dollhouses.
As you do.
That I know. As you do. That was like her early thing.
See, we should all be independently wealthy and obsessed with things.
I think her husband was obsessed with pinball machines. Is that right?
I think yeah. That rings a bell.
Everybody needs her something.
Look, you got to have your thing.
No shade.
You got to have your thing.
Yeah.
So here's a list of all the publishers and agents. Oh my God, agents. Wow.
Yeah, and with the agents, it lists some of their clients as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so you have, again, addresses. On 342, there's a great ad for the Elaine Davey Literary Agency.
Oh, I love it. She's on the phone. I've seen that picture 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, she works for you.
We accept queries. I'm taking one on the phone right now.
And then it gets into this weird, like, back and forth of, there's a page on 345 of book promotion tips. And then on 346, it's hardcovers that you can buy to read. That Severin House did a whole line of books that Kathryn selected to be republished as hardcovers.
Wow.
That were sold sort of through RT. I forget exactly what the deal was. But then on 347 is reference books for the author. So it's this back and forth of, like, you should really be taking in this message that you should be a romance author.
And look, we're going to tell you how to write letters to your favorite romance authors. You're going to become friends, and then you're going to be successful.
Right. Exactly.
So I always ask this question: what books are you reading that you want to tell people about?
So I've been on a bit of a journey across genres lately.
Ooh.
So I am currently reading the audiobook 2022 Marple Collection, which was 12 new retellings of Miss Marple.
Yes.
Alyssa Cole did one.
Yep.
There's a bunch of, other authors of like sci-fi and mystery, and it's a fun read. I also just recently read John Hodgman's Vacation Land.
Ooh.
Which is a memoir that is written by a man in his mid-40s who's from New England and moves to a place that is more reticent than the place he grew up in, which feels like it was written for me. So it really resonated with me. He's writing about Maine, but I'm in Ohio, so it's an interesting read. And then I have Miss Bev's most recent one, Beverly Jenkins' Christmas book. I am like halfway through.
It's one of the blessings, right? It's one of
A Christmas to Remember.
Yes, and it's got a gorgeous, like stupid gorgeous cover.
It's delightful. It's not strictly a romance, obviously, like the rest of that series, but it's delightful, and I love reading Bev's writing.
She described those books as the ones I give to the ladies at church. The church ladies. Exactly.
So I've really been spreading out. I've been reading a lot of Doctor Who novels lately, which is fun to go back to the David Tennant era, especially. So I've actually not been reading that much romance, but I'm sort of going into a research project right now where I'm going to dig into some older books. And
it happens. Also, I find that the genre does things where it embraces a trend, and I'm like, oh, this one's not for me. I'll wait till the next one. Like I'm not big into like big angsty, big emotional trauma stories. I didn't like it in New Adult. I didn't like it in Paranormal. I don't like it now, but like it'll change again, and then I'll come back.
Yeah, and I tend to read backwards anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm looking mostly at the history of the genre, I'm mostly reading older, sometimes much older books.
Yeah.
So I'm very rarely like up on the new things, unless it's like an Olivia Dade, which I'm always into.
Oh yeah.
And books like that. But usually it's much older, Harlequins and Signets and all those
older ones, the ones that get yellow and crispy.
Yes, or unless they have a red edge,
or a blue edge. A blue edge. That'll come off on your hands really nicely.
Yes.
RT Magazine. I need gloves when I start scanning them. They are very, very sheddy.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking me on this tour of the Romance Reader's Handbook. This has been very fun. Where can people find you if you wish to be found?
So, as I said, you can find me at romancehistory.com. Where I write sort of short essays about authors, about trends, about books I'm sort of squeeing about, reference books. I did a whole series on reference books. I am on Blue Sky right now, mostly as at Stegan.bluesky, STEGAN.bluesky.
Yep.
Whatever that is.
I talked to you there.
Also on Instagram as Romance Historian. And who knows where else in the near future.
There'll be another one. Thank you, Steve. This has been delightful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much to Steve Ammidown for reaching out to me and saying, hey, you want to do an episode about this weird book? And to which I said, yes, I do. I always love to do weird episodes about weird books. You can find a copy of the Romance Reader's Handbook pretty often. They're mostly in used bookstores like Libris or eBay. You can usually find a copy. It's a really interesting artifact. But like I said in the intro, I scanned the pages we talked about so you can have a look at the PDF. It is at smartbitchestrashybooks.com/podcast under episode 618. I will also have links to as many of the books that we talked about as we can find. Some of them will be out of print or very difficult to find, but you can also find that in the show notes, and you know where that is. I won't repeat the URL. You know where we are. You know what we're doing on the internet. As always, I end with a terrible joke. This week's joke comes from Bull, and I love this joke. Are you ready? If the mantis are always praying, what is their faith? Give up. If praying mantises are always praying, what is their faith? Well, it varies. They're all insects. That is a deeply nerdy dad joke, and I love it so much. Thank you, Bull. Insects. On behalf of everyone here We wish you the very best of reading. Have a great weekend, and we will see you back here next week. Smart Podcast Trashy Books is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more outstanding podcasts to subscribe to at frolic.media/podcasts.